the economic impact is so devastating if this doesn't get through. Members of Congress, frankly, of both parties acknowledge that, even though this will end up being a partisan bill, and it will be a discussion among Republicans about what the final legislation looks like. But I'm really optimistic it's going to get done. And you had mentioned that the president wants to get it passed by Congress by July 4th.
Right.
I think he actually wants to sign it by July 4th.
That's what's on his desk, right? The fireworks are going to go off, Jay.
Exactly. I can see him choreographing the entire show.
Oh, absolutely. Do you care? You want to see this done by the end of the year before the tax cuts potentially expire, right?
Oh, absolutely. So look, the good news is...
Or does it need to happen by the 4th of July?
No, it does.
Okay.
It does. And let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the good news. The good news is that the corporate rates that were instituted in 2017 remain intact. They're not messed around with in the bill. So they're permanent already. But the real problem we have, and those numbers that you cited from our study that we did with EY, that is as a result of some provisions that have already expired, and the part that is really devastating, which is the pass-through deduction for small businesses. If that expires, their tax rate goes up enormously.
What's already expired?
The R&D tax deduction, interest deductibility,
which you want to make
expensing,
permanent.
And so we want to make it permanent. And the Senate side has done that. So that's why we really like the Senate bill. We love the House bill too. They did yeoman's work there. They got literally all 10 of our key priorities in that bill. The Senate retained them and actually made them better. There are still a few issues that we'd like to see resolved in the Senate bill.
Okay.
But that permanency is really important, right? And when you ask, is it okay to get it done at the end of the year versus say now?
Your members say no.
Well, here's why, right? You're talking about multi-billion-dollar, hundreds of billions of dollars in planning for investments here in the United States. You don't just do that with a flip of the light switch, right? So frankly, I'm worried that it's already too late to plan for 2026 and 2027. But hopefully, if we get it done now, they can make those plans for those investments.
Interesting. We talk about permanence with regard to business tax cuts. This has been a drive on the Senate side, to your point. It's about to come back to the House, where they want to have a $40,000 cap on salt. And this is where the push and pull starts to, I say they, a small group of lawmakers from states like New York and New Jersey. You know how delicate this whole balance is. If you make the tax cuts permanent, that gets to be a lot more difficult to pay for the salt deduction. This is the debate that's happening right now. And if you could bring us in the room, what are you hearing from lawmakers when you talk about this?
So here's the interesting thing. If you look at the House and how they had to arrive at their final numbers, they have one way that they're measuring revenue. The Senate has a different policy.
This is the current baseline.
Yeah,
we walk out hard on this show, so people will actually know what you're talking about.
Well, so look,
assuming the parliamentarian
we like current
keeps
policy, right? And
you do. You want the current policy baseline.
The Senate side, right? The way they're scoring it, and that gives them a little bit more flexibility. Now, I don't know how much flexibility. I understand what members of Congress are pushing for when they represent states that have, where they want a higher limit on the salt deduction. For us, though, our number one priority is, you might guess, is we want to make sure that those business taxes are permanent, so that, again, businesses can plan for the future.
Yes, right.
We're all in on the president's call for growing more manufacturing here in the United States. That has been a consistent thread through every administration, Republican and Democrat, for as long as I've been in this job. But President Trump is probably a bigger champion than anybody I've ever seen of making sure that we grow domestic manufacturing. But we can only do that if we have a comprehensive manufacturing strategy, which involves permanence on the tax front. Also involves modernized regulations. It involves a smart trade policy. It involves workforce development. And I would argue it also involves having immigration reform of some type.
Well, that's actually fascinating. And well, you are speaking Donald Trump's language there, I suppose. Is he about to pick up the phone? Do you want him to push this thing over the top? A lot of people say
I have a feeling he's
the
going
only
to.
one who's going to do it.
I mean, don't
Yeah.
you think he's probably going to?
Well,
do that,
yeah.
Joe? I mean, he
Just wait till Friday. Watch Truth Social and see where we are.
he is not shy about picking up the phone and telling members of Congress what he would like to see them do. And frankly, on this, we're going to agree pretty strongly with the president that this needs to get across the line.
Yes.
And again, you cited those macro numbers, but we've broken it down state by state, district by district. So members know exactly what is at stake here in terms of the number of manufacturing jobs that they will lose in their congressional district if they vote no, right? How much investment could potentially be lost? All that information is there for them to see. We have a calculator on our website. And by the way, anybody can go to that and take a look at what does that mean for them back home.
Well, that's fascinating. So when Jay Timmons is walking the halls of Congress, they know you're coming with some pretty hard truths. What's the more difficult meeting right now, when you're knocking on doors on the Senate side or the House side? Because it seems like the nerves are on the House side, knowing that they might have to swallow whatever comes back. They might need a guy like Jay Timmons to remind them of what's at stake here.
So, thank you, but it's actually the people in their districts that really matter, right? It's the folks that are on those shop floors.
Are they calling?
They are.
Yeah.
And they are flooding congressional offices with messages of, hey, please support this bill. It's important for my job. It's also important for the health and strength and vitality of our community. I think members of Congress understand that.
Yeah.
Again, I don't blame members of Congress for trying to get something that is very parochial to their district. That makes perfect sense to me. In the end, we have to think about what is in the national interest. Getting this bill across the line is definitely in our national interest, as far as economic security, and I would argue national security as well.
Debt and deficits bother you at all?
Yeah, they definitely bother me, and I think we're going to have to take a hard look at spending. But look, here's one thing I learned from George Allen, who was my mentor, and he was the governor of Virginia. I was his chief of staff. We were confronted with similar issues in Virginia, where you have to have a balanced budget. It's a requirement constitutionally in Virginia. And he said, look, budgets are about priorities. And what is our number one priority? Our number one priority is to grow the economy so that more people benefit. We can have more taxpayers actually putting money into the Treasury so we can grow programs that help more people. So I think we have to identify that strengthening the business outlook in this country, the job creating outlook in this country and investment outlook is better for the American people as a whole. And then we can start looking at how do we manage the growth of some of these other programs that I would argue many of those are obviously very, very important. But you have to have the money and the revenue in order to fund those programs. And that's what we want to do in the business community, right? Yeah, sure. We want to grow jobs. We want to grow the U.S. Treasury.
We've spent the balance of this conversation with Jay Timmons talking about uncertainty for business, trying to make plans for the rest of this year. Tariffs play into that as well. How concerned are you about July 9th? What's going to happen? What are they telling you out of the administration? What to prepare for?
Isn't it funny? You heard all along the way that, this bill's not going to pass the House. The bill's not going to pass the Senate. Right now, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House, and they are very unified. And the president is pushing the members of Congress to get things done on the tax side.
Yeah.
I think he's probably just as eager to get the 89 agreements that are still outstanding done. He said he wanted to get them done by July the 9th. We certainly hope he can.
Yeah. How about extend this again if they're not all done?
Well, that's uncertain. That creates uncertainty too, right?
So you'd just like to meet the deadline.
I want to see this get done. I want to see it get done in a way that benefits manufacturers in the United States, certainly, because I represent manufacturers in the United States, and what's good for American consumers as well.